All right, welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about something very important. We're going to talk about positioning. So how can we position things on the screen? So let's dive right in. I'm going to go ahead and switch this over to my screen here. And you can see that we have this positioned. Let me just refresh, get this back to normal. We have our index .html here. Let me see if I want to even you know what, maybe we'll work on this page for a little while. So what I'm going to do here is start off with talking about positioning. So let's look at, for example, maybe what I'll do is I'm going to add a special um, element here. Let's add this right below our unordered list here. And I'm going to give this some text. This is some, you know what? Yeah, we'll just do a special announcement. I don't know why. That's probably even misspelled, but that's okay. Look, what we'll do is this goes here. What I'm going to do is also, I'm going to give this an ID of now special, because I don't know if the announcement is spelled correctly. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to our style.css, and I'm going to scroll down here to the bottom here, and we're going to talk about positioning. So let's go ahead and target our special ID there, and we're going to give this a position. Now the first position we talk about is static. Static is the default position that the browser has. There's going to be nothing special about setting this position to static. That is exactly in the position of the flow of the document that it would normally be in. But we can move this around. So actually, let's talk about the next one I want to talk about is relative. So we can set this to relative. And if we do that, you're going to notice that it looks the same. However, what I could do is I could define a left position here, and I could say 150 pixels, and hit refresh. And I could also give it a top. Now you could do top, right, bottom, left. I'm going to give it a top of 150 pixels as well. Whoop, I keep typing the O instead of 0. And now you can see that it is way down here mixed in with this other stuff here. And the reason that's happening is because the position relative will position it relative to its normal position. Nothing else around it is going to be adjusted to fit into that spot. The DOM still thinks it exists in this spot here where it normally would, but when you position it relative and then give it a left and a right, it literally positions it relative to where it should be, okay? Relative to where it should be. Now, this isn't all that useful. I'm gonna go ahead and give this a background color, and let's just make this orange. Let's see if we can make it orange with our hex just by playing around. I'm going to give this a hexadecimal of some red, and let's try some green here. So let's try FF, and then let's try 00. So that's too much green. So red, let's try DD. Let's try 55. There we go. So let's try DD5500. And if I do that, now this has a background of orange. So that's not all that useful yet. However, another position that we could give this would be a position of fixed. Okay. If I give this a position of fixed, you can see that what happens, see I don't have anything else, I just got position fixed. Position fixed takes it out of its normal flow, okay, if it's block level, it actually collapses down, as we can see here, and it's hard to tell, but it's covering up text because this text shifted up. So in the DOM's perspective, this thing here doesn't exist. In fact, I can scroll my web page and that doesn't move. So fixed position is fixed based upon the it's based upon the screen here. Okay, so based upon the screen. So fixed is not moving even when I scroll the page, and that's going there behind that. So what we could do, and you see this a lot, is we can make this kind of a help button at the bottom right hand side. So what we could do is say I want to put this 5 pixels from the bottom, and now it's there on the bottom. It still doesn't move, but I might want to also position this 5 pixels from the right. And now you can see I have this special announcement over here on the bottom right of the screen that is just always there and it never moves. Okay, you'll see that quite often with chat buttons or help buttons or something like that in a website. But yeah, that is the fixed position. The fixed position. Okay, so let's talk about now. Let's talk about absolute positioning. And in order to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an extra couple of divs here. And I want to, oops, I typed P for some reason. So let's do a div, and inside of this div, I'm just going to add another div, and we'll put some text in here. Okay. And then what we're going to do is give this a class of parent, and we'll give this a class of child. So let's go back now to let's refresh, and now we have this some text here. We're going to go ahead and leave this fixed position thing here, and we're going to work on this one now. We're going to position that all weird. So what I want to be able to do is let's first make this parent. Let's add a class here of parent, and let's make the parent have a height of 200 pixels, and let's, just so we can see this easily, let's give this a background color of, let's try this aqua. That's cool. All right, so now we have a parent div here that takes up 100% of the width, and we have inside of that some child text. So what I'm going to do with the child now is let's make the child have a width of 100 pixels, and let's make it have a height. Let's just leave the height, but let's give it some padding. So let's give it a padding of, how about 18 pixels? And let's give it a background color of yellow. Okay, so now we can see this easily on the screen here. You know what? Let's get rid of this. Ooh, no, we're not gonna get rid of the width. Let's instead do text align center, just to make that look a little nicer. I don't know why that's just bothering me, that's off center. Okay, so now we have some center text, and it's positioned in the top left of this. So let's play around with some positioning on this child and see what happens. First, let's give it a position of absolute. We'll save that and refresh, and we can see that nothing really changes there. But what happens now if I give it the top of, let's say, 50 pixels? Oops. Okay, so now this is actually 50 pixels from the top of the screen instead of 50 pixels from the top of here. So that brings up an interesting point. The way it works is that absolute positioned elements are positioned when you use the top, left, right, and bottom, or any sort of positioning. It is relative to the first parent element that it comes in contact with a display that is set to relative. Okay, so you can think of right now the main window is probably set to relative, or it just goes all the way up to that one. So to fix this, if I want this position absolutely but still relative to this parent div, then I need to set my display to my parent div to relative. And when I do that, nothing happens for some reason. Oops, that's because I put display. I'm sorry. It's position relative. And when I do that, now this child is looking for the first going up the DOM tree. So this, if you look in the DOM here, we have this parent and the child, and it first looks at its parent. It's like, are you position relative? Nope. Then it goes up higher, and then it gets to the body, and eventually it'll find the body. But instead, we've defined the position relative on the parent div, and since we've done that, it makes itself absolutely positioned relative to that parent because of this position relative. So let me get rid of that again just to show you what happens. So if I click on the parent here and we remove that position relative, now it's positioned relative to the first relative position element it comes to, which is the main window here. So if I turn that back on, now it's relative to this. So I can do more positioning here. We could actually say left, and we could do something like left 200 pixels. And I can move this thing all around like that by giving it positions, and this is positioned based upon the parent element. So you'll see this all the time with, like, say we had a modal and a close button that's always up here. That close button might be positioned absolutely, and then this main window would have been positioned relative. Okay, so even though we didn't define a top, left, bottom, or whatever on this parent, it is in its natural flow in the document. However, because it is set to position relative, any absolutely positioned child inside of that will be positioned that. And we can actually do multiple children. So let's do a child 2 just to kind of demonstrate this. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a div, and we'll say child 2, and let's change this sum text to child 1 just so it makes sense. And let's actually give this a class equal to child 2. All right, so now if I go back to our styles.css, what I'm going to do here is give this child 2, and you know what? We're going to keep it all the same. So let's do a comma here and do child 2. And let's see what happens when we refresh the page. Now you can't see child 1 anymore because child 2 is on top of it. So all we need to do in child 2 now, remember this will cascade down, is we can actually change the top and left. So we can say top property, I want this now to be, let's say, 100 pixels. And let's do the left as, let's try 70 pixels. Let's see what that gives us. Okay. They're still kind of overlapping, so let's try 170 pixels here. And obviously I can't do math, so this left is at 200 and it's 100 pixels wide, so we need to do at least 300. So let's do 320, well, we'll do 370. There we go. So now we have child 1 and child 2, and they're both being positioned absolutely inside of this relative parent based upon their top, left, right, and bottom properties. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense with positioning. This is how you can manipulate positions of things on this screen. All right, let's see about one more, and let's see if we have enough content. Yes, we have enough content to do this. So let's say, for example, I wanted my nav bar to not get hidden when people scroll, okay? So what we could do there is we could go back up here to our nav. Let's add a property here to our nav, and let's give it a position of sticky. This is a relatively new one, but now nothing changes about its position except for when I scroll up, nothing happens. What did I do wrong there? I think I might have to set a top on this. So let's do top 0 pixels and refresh. There we go. Now it's hard to see, but what's happening, maybe what we can do to make it stand out a little bit more is let's do a background color, and let's give this a background color of maybe a dark gray. Well, dark gray. I don't like that. Let's try 333. Okay, and now that we'll probably add some padding as well. So let's do some top and bottom padding of 8 pixels, and you know what, let's do 8 all around there and see what that looks like. Okay, so I have this navigation thing up here, and let's just get rid of our span that was inside that nav and refresh here. And now when I scroll up, you can see that it's a sticky position, makes it stop right there at its top. And as I scroll, everything else kind of goes behind it, or just keep scrolling. It doesn't look like it here because of something called ZIndex, or actually it's because it's hard to explain, but I don't know if I want to get into this. Should I or should I not? Let's just try this and see if this works. Yeah. So basically, I could give this a ZIndex. Now, ZIndex, there are 3 axes that we have to talk about with positioning. There is the x-axis, which is horizontal here. This would be considered the, I'm moving my cursor along the x-axis. There's the y-axis, which is vertical here, that's up and down. And then there's the z-axis, and the z-axis is like, imagine a 3D, it's depth. So I can't move my cursor on the z-axis, but the z-axis, you can imagine it kind of like a layer. And if I have a higher z-index than I do over something else, it will show up on top of it if they end up going over one another. So the fact that all of this has a z-index of of auto, I set this to 3, which is higher because most of those auto would be 1. So now everything kind of seems to flow behind my navigation bar, which is what I would want. Okay, so I guess there's a little crash course on ZIndex. We'll probably get to that during our project some, but that shows you how you can choose to stack the ZIndex higher or lower. Let me give you one more example of that. I could actually do that with the parent here. And let's give this a z-index, and we'll give this a z-index of 5, which is actually higher than the z-index of our menu, and let's see what happens. So now when it scrolls up, it goes over top of our menu. But if I set this, our other one was set to 3, so if I set this down to 2 or 1, and we refresh, then when it scrolls, it goes below it, okay? So that is how ZIndex works. So you get a little bit of extra in this video just for some added freshness. But yeah, that is how the different types of positioning. Just to go over those quickly again, we have the relative position, which isn't that useful except for when you want to position things absolutely inside of them. In my opinion, that's what I end up using that the most for. Then we have the absolute position, and the absolute is based upon the closest parent that is positioned relatively. And then we have sticky, which you can define a top and when it scrolls, it starts out in its normal flow of the document, but when it hits that top, it doesn't go any further. So I allowed it to go all the way up to 0, and then it sticks there, okay? The other position we have is fixed, and those stay fixed on the screen regardless of where they are. Okay, and then the other one we have is static. Now, static is the default behavior, the default position. You can't apply top, left, bottom, or right. It won't move anything around. It is absolutely static, meaning unchanging, and it is within the normal flow of the document. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense. We'll get tons of practice in our projects doing this, but practice with some positioning and move some stuff around and see what happens there. So we'll talk in the next video, guys. Hope you're having fun. Again, if you need more information, you can check out w3schools.com and also the developer.mozilla.org and look for the CSS in those, and you can learn more and more about CSS. Now, I do just want to reiterate, it doesn't matter if you're memorizing everything as much as you just kind of understand how things work and that you know what's possible with CSS. That's my goal in this course, is to kind of show you how CSS works, what's possible, get you some practice using it, and then through repetition and time, you will learn most of the CSS that you use all the time will just be embedded into your brain and you won't have to look it up or think about it. All right, well, have a wonderful day.